Okay, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the May 21st meeting of the Facilities Committee. I call this meeting to order. The members of the committee, Mrs. Merrill is here, and Mr. Helms is here, and Mrs. Helms will be joining us shortly. So I need a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the open session meeting minutes from April 23rd, 2020. I need a motion to approve those minutes if everybody has looked at it.
Motion to approve.
Okay, and I wanted to let everybody on the, we have a feasibility study in 3C, so there's two gentlemen on the call with us, on the Zoom meeting with us that will talk at 3C, so I just wanted everyone to know that. So I'm sorry again. I had a motion to approve the April 23rd minutes and a second.
Yeah, seconded. Yep.
Thank you. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Great, thank you very much. The first thing then is the Rocky River Elementary School easement. Mr. Burnett.
We have two items that we're requesting that the Facilities Committee forward to the Board of Education for approval. That's an easement, and that is it's a storm drainage easement, and it's a construction maintenance agreement. If you all are familiar with it, the only things you may wonder about is the exhibits. If you're familiar with them, then good. I can quickly just run through that. Here's Exhibit A. That's the property. The property that the developer is to the south of Rocky River Elementary School. It's currently owned by Harris Teeter Properties. That's it. It's 57 acres. Quickly run down. If you can follow this, this is the school. This is the Harris Teeter property over here. There's a drainage easement here that's out of the way of any of our pavement. And then there's a drainage easement down here. And that is, it looks like it conflicts with the baseball field. It doesn't. It's actually down the hill from the baseball field. Along with this is the developer is going to install a sidewalk. And on their property, they're going to have an easement for pedestrian access. We talked about this several months ago, and at the time we were good with the concept. For in exchange for these drainage easements, you're going to clear these trees here. That's our request. And you may recall when we have winter events, ice and snow, this area here is all in shadow, and we have a hard time clearing that and getting that ready for school. So that would be a benefit to us, and that was at our request. So the request is that the Board of Facilities Committee recommend to the Board of Education approving the drainage easement and the construction maintenance agreements.
Okay, great, thank you. When it says that they're proposing to construct a sidewalk, is that part of these agreements?
Yes.
Okay.
Happy to answer any other questions.
So Dave, do you feel good about what they want to do?
Yes.
Do you feel good about this plan?
We do.
Okay, so you would like this to go to the full board?
We would.
Okay, I make a motion that we approve this from committee and send to the full board for approval.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, 3-0 vote, thank you. Next is the transfer of bond funds. Mr. Burnett?
Yes. We just recently approved the sizable change order for rock at the transportation project that exhausted the project funds. Obviously, the project is still going. What we are asking is that we can transfer $200,000 from bond savings to be used in an allowance change order to cover possible remaining expenses. So happy to answer any questions on that.
Okay, Mr. Burnett, one second. Mrs. Helms joined us on the last vote for the Rocky River easement. So I want to correct it that it's a 4-0 vote.
So staff requests the Facilities Committee to recommend to the Board of Education to approve the transfer of bond savings to the transportation project and approve a change order to the construction contract for $200,000. Anything that we don't use comes right back to us. So
does this have to go to the Board of County Commissioners?
that's our expectation, yes.
Okay. So it would be subject to the approval of the Board of County Commissioners. Yeah. Okay, great. So if anyone has any questions, not, I need a motion to recommend to the full board the approval of the transfer of the bond savings to the transportation project.
So moved. Second.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
4-0. Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is the 2020 bond proposal.
So from your last, from a meeting with the county commissioners, joint meeting on February 24th, the discussion of a bond referendum was held. The discussions between the two boards were that the Board of Education needed to submit their request to the county by June or in June of this year for a November 2020 referendum. The projects that we have proposed haven't changed since we've had our discussions. I can quickly run down. It's Forest Hills High School, East Union Middle School, Porter Ridge High, Marvin Ridge High, East Elementary, Parkwood High, Cuthbertson Middle, and a bond contingency. So all those projects would be touched, all those sites would be touched. The total bond request is at this point is $129,503,270. As we've noted all along, but I didn't mention it in this memo, is that we would still want to have an agreement with the county as far as escalation rates would go. But that's the proposal. So staff is requesting the Facilities Committee to recommend to the Board of Education to approve the proposed 2020 school construction bond request and forward to the Board of County Commissioners. Happy to answer any questions.
I think that as a full board, we have to have a conversation about this bond. And, I watched Melissa and Mrs. Merrill and I watched the county commissioner meeting yesterday on budgets. So it's an ongoing conversation. So I would love to do a bond this year. I think it's the right thing to do for Forest Hills and for some of the other things that are on this project. But Matt, anybody else? Melissa?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it's a good idea. Just have to see what they come back with. I think the timing's pretty good.
Okay.
I'm good with that.
Okay. So if I heard Matt correctly, send it to the full board is what he said? I didn't hear.
Yes, so moved.
Okay, second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So, Ms. Hightail, should we not then plan on having?
Can I ask a question first? Is that if Christina, was that thorough?
It was.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Thank you. I'm sorry, Mr. Strickland.
So then we should be prepared to have a presentation at the board meeting as well for full discussion, correct?
Yes, please,
Thank
not on the consent agenda, but on the regular agenda. please.
Thank
you. Is everybody on the committee good with that? That it's a full discussion, not consent? Okay, great.
Yeah, good with that.
Thank you. Okay. The next item is Rayview easement. Mr. Carpenter joined us.
Good morning.
Yes, so David Carpenter is with Morrisburg Architects also.
Okay, so he's waiting for the discussion on the Venus Street feasibility.
That's correct.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. Thank you. Okay, Rayview Elementary Wesley Chapel Fire Department easement request, but this is on informational. So we've talked about this before, correct? And it was informational at that time as well.
We did. Just a quick update, if you all don't mind. And if you look at the screen, this was the original route that they were proposing for a sewer line to cross the Rayview property, which comes along here. We had hoped to be able to convince them to go this way, just so that it didn't cross our property like it's doing. They have, their engineers have looked at it and determined that that's a more expensive solution. And that, so it's very possible that it's going to end up going across our property. In the end, it's really not going to be that harmful, to us. So if that's the route that it takes from a staff perspective, we don't really have, any major issues with that. So I did want to let you know of that possible change. The fire department is working and needs to continue to work with Union County Public Works to finalize that route. We'll work with the county with easements and construction easements. That is probably coming soon, but they're not there yet. So just wanted to let you know about this change.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Any questions, committee members?
No.
No.
Moving on to the New Salem Elementary School water line easement. Mr. Burnett.
Okay. Again, this is for information. We actually just met with the engineers and the county. I think it was Tuesday on site. That's a very large water line project that the county has. It does cross New Salem's property. It crosses between the school and the sewage treatment facility, which is in the back. Of course, that's of great concern to us because we spent over $800,000 on that facility. It is going to impact their track. In the documentation, you see their proposal. It is compensation is proposed at $14,250. We're just going through this paperwork now. We're not ready, to give you a recommendation yet, but we did want you to see it as we saw it. Again, we received that this week, so it's very very recent, and so that's the item. Just again giving you a heads up on it.
You said it's going across their track.
Yes.
How much would it cost to relocate the track or to fix it if they tear it up?
So as part of their contract,
They would have to do it?
as we understand it, with the Union County and the contractor, that is going to be in the contract for their contractor to repair the damage to the track.
Okay.
How many elementary schools have tracks?
Quite a few, actually. And
Okay.
this isn't a high school track. Usually they're, glorified walking, paths. This one is paved, and it is pretty decent as far as wide and shape. So it's a pretty nice improvement for an elementary school.
Okay, and what size water main is that also?
I'm sorry?
What size water main is that?
If I remember correctly, it might have been like a 36-inch water line.
Okay.
And
Transmission main then.
it may be, I'm sure it's in the details, but I just don't recall it.
Okay.
But it is a major project that's coming through. It's going to take quite a bit of time. It looks like they'll probably award the project and give a notice to proceed, not this summer, but maybe this fall or winter. It'll take a little while for them to get to the site. They're going to give us a 30-day notice so that the school can kind of prepare for not using the track area and that part of the site. And again, it's just for information purposes.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Any additional questions? Okay, so we are on to the Venus Street feasibility study. Mr. Burnett.
And we do have Todd Berg, Tarek Hamid, and David Carpenter with Morrisburg Architects, and they conducted the feasibility study for Venus Street. We had asked them to look at using this facility now that transportation will be moving out this summer. What's the options here? And what we had originally hoped for was that there'd be an option where facilities and maybe warehouse could be here. But quickly that was ruled out as we looked at the programs. And the architects will talk about it, but we'll just go ahead and hand it off to Todd and Tarek and David, and we'll jump in as needed.
So we started this study a few months ago, wrapped it up about 30 days ago. We appreciate the opportunity to study the building at 2 Street. It's around a 30,000 square foot warehouse building for bus maintenance. Obviously, facilities offices are there, maintenance offices are there as well. So going into the project, we were requested to look at it as a permanent solution for your warehousing needs. So in studying it, it's 20,000 square feet on the first floor and about 10 on the second floor. We quickly saw that there were some limitations from a warehousing standpoint. And I believe, Dave can correct me if I'm wrong, you have about 30,000 square feet on off-site warehousing. So there wouldn't be the option to shift all of your current warehousing off-site into this building due to limitations in structure, and also there's really not much option to store on the second floor due to some structural limitations. So we concluded that part of this kind of three-phase study. Next one, Dave and the CTE group came in and asked us to study 3 different options for CTE. They named them bare bones option, which was the least impactful, the Goldilocks option, and the dreaming big option. This report laid out all of those programs and also associated costs relative to them. With those 3 CTE programs, facilities maintenance would have to move out of the building. And so we also studied this kind of 5th option of a new facilities and maintenance building on a site to be determined. So that's kind of the overall look at all the components of this study.
I have a question.
We're happy to answer any questions relative to cost as well.
So the warehousing option, you're saying that it would only be able to have limited storage because of
so the first floor
option was warehouse, right?
The first look was at the warehouse. The warehouse program is 30,000 square feet. I believe that the existing warehouse is in the neighborhood of 26,000, something like that. And after meeting with David Tollison and working through the program, the desired program is 30,000 square feet. Certainly any warehouse we can fit to whatever space we have, but we're storing, at least 25,000 square feet of material and admin space at the warehouse.
I thought I read something in their feasibility study about that we would not be able to put a load that big on the second floor. Is that not true? That's what I'm asking about.
Okay.
That's correct. Yeah, the loading is limited on the second floor because of the existing construction. So, you know, depending on the area of the second floor, it changes, but it's relatively light loading for warehouse storage. So that would preclude using the second floor for a lot of storage.
So how many square feet is, so if the building is 30,000 square feet, how much of that is on the second floor?
About 11,000 and some change. So there's about 20,000 on the first floor and about 11,000 on the second floor.
So then basically what I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that we wouldn't have enough room at the Bean Street facility to make it a warehouse that would accommodate all the stuff that we have. Is that what I'm hearing? Okay.
Correct.
And that option was $5.1 million. And it wouldn't get us where we needed to go.
That's correct. Quite a few upgrades will be necessary to turn it into a warehouse, specifically a sprinkler system and quite a bit of demo to open up the building. That also would include a new roof and some of the improvements just to make it sustainable for warehousing.
Okay, so the next one, the next option, as I read it, was bare bones option, which would have CTE, automotive service and automotive repair, as well as carpentry CTE classes, correct?
Yes.
And that would be at a cost of $5.7 million. And I assume that we would have to do the same things that you just listed if it was a warehouse, where if it housed CTE classes, right? So upgrades, sprinkler systems, new roofs, things of that sort, correct? Okay, so that would be all the options would need some of those upgrades, correct? Okay. Then the I love the names of this, Goldilocks option is the same thing for CTE, auto service, auto repair, carpentry, and then adding electrical, HVAC, and UCPS offices and classrooms. And that's $7.8 million. And then, okay, so I'll go through all of them. Then dreaming big option is everything I just mentioned for Goldilocks, adding masonry and welding to it as well. But I thought I read somewhere in the feasibility study that one of these options, or maybe more than one of these options, our building wasn't big enough to house all these CTE classes. Am I remembering that incorrectly?
And that's the dreaming big. Part of it is there's a need for quite a bit of outdoor area, covered area. So the plan starts to indicate some of that overflow, but we were trying to study how much can you fit in the existing building. So yes, there'd be an additional, I want to say 3,000 square feet outside of the building. So if you look at page 22, if you happen to have it in front of you, there at the bottom, it indicates the existing building is not allowed for entire desired program. We calculate the entire program would be 35,000 square feet.
Okay, and that includes the outbuildings and the covered areas and stuff like that, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So that was $8.3 million. So I guess, I know this is on here for information, so this is a lot to take in for everybody, and it's a good starting point to have conversations surrounding this, because we would have to move facilities and maintenance out of the existing Venus Street and build another building for them, which would be about a little over $2 million. So I think some of this discussion is academics and CTE with Brian Davis and all that kind of stuff. And the other part of this is bond money, or how much can we get out of our CIP versus bonds versus other things. I like the idea of moving some CTE to especially since it's a garage, to a common space. I like that idea, and it's in Monroe, and that's great, but we have to look at this in the broad picture of all the things that we're trying to do. And we'll have to have a discussion at the curriculum committee as well to see what the full board is looking at.
Well, what I would like to add to that is in the 2016 bond, one of the primary discussions around a new transportation facility and Venus Street was that we would need to get out of our lease agreement and that we needed to create our own storage facility. So, you know, I stand by that because our current lease agreement is very, very expensive. I don't remember the numbers right off the top of my head, but I have the contract in my files. We never had a discussion about adding CTE or academic courses to Venus Street. I think it's a interesting idea, but it was never discussed in 2016 when we wrote the bond. So I'm adamant that we really do need to pursue getting out of our storage lease and doing what we need to do of having storage on a UCPS property instead of someone else's property.
I hear you from the 2016 bond. That was one of the things we were doing. I guess we would have to look at if it would cost us $5.1 million to refurbish the current Venus Street facility to make it a warehouse. How much are we paying a year, and when will we get that money back if we were to do that? So those would be my questions. So I would like to know the next time we have this conversation is how much we're paying yearly to the storage facility that we currently have, just like Ms. Merrill just asked.
Hey, Dave, what are we actually storing at the warehouse?
We have a lot. It's the traditional, furniture, old furniture that the schools can come to and look and replenish whatever they need. But it's also a lot of the paper goods, custodial supplies, things like that come in. And just kind of a unique item that we've got going on currently is where schools are ordering items, supplies, and things like that usually would be delivered to the school, and someone would be there to receive it. That's not the case anymore. So all that is going to the warehouse also, and then we are then delivering it to the school or to the school of whoever ordered it. So we can certainly take a tour. There's lots of records, lots of required records that we're supposed to keep, and it's the times that I have walked through, it's a jam-packed facility. It's got high bay storage in the large bay area. So be happy to give a tour.
Okay.
The other question too, you just mentioned documents. Is there any type of like fire protection we have to have for the documents, or like what type of documents are they?
So there's the records. We keep records. There's student records.
Historical.
It's a lot. And just got the text. We do get science and science kits that are there. EC and payroll records are kept there as well.
We're required by law to hold them for so many years, and that's why.
Yeah, I didn't know if it'd be better maybe look at other options for the record part of it.
Can you say that again, Matt?
I didn't know if it'd be better to look at different options for the records portion of it. I know there are companies out there that have documents and stuff off site. They're protected, fire protected, everything. I don't know if that'd be another possible option, maybe. Or if we can maybe move digital.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. There's companies that scan everything in and hold it digitally. So we need to find out the cost of the warehouse lease and a couple other questions. Does anybody have anything else? No. Hearing none. Thank you very much to the feasibility study. It was good. It was interesting to read. We appreciate it. It should start some conversations on what we should do with Venus Street.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. We'll sign off now.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. The next item is the subdivision reassignment. What? This subdivision reassignment, Park Place and Courtyards at Howie Farms. So we all get in, the members of the facilities committee get copies of impact statements, and these are 2 recent impact statements that have come through. There was 3 of them. The other one was that for Union County was on the corner of Cuthbertson and Providence Road, but we took care of that in earlier meetings and moved that to Parkwood. These 2 subdivisions, Park Place is about 2,100 homes in the just outside of, and maybe Don can help me, outside of Wesley Chapel. And then there's the Courtyards at Howie Farms. The Courtyards at Howie Farms is on Billy Howie Road between Newtown and Waxhaw Indian Trail. And I forget, Don, how many houses was that supposed to be?
I'm sorry, I'm pulling it up now.
Yeah, I know that Park Place was 2,110, right? Units. A combination of houses, apartments, and townhomes. And Howie
Yes.
Farms is supposed to be a 55 and over, right?
I'm sorry, I was looking at something else. Park Place, as you said, is 2,110 units. About 1,550 single family, 194 townhomes, 360 apartments. A portion of that is in the Parkwood Western Union area, about 400, so a little less than 20%. The remainder is in the Rocky River and Sun Valley area.
So we had asked as a committee to discuss new developments and, whether or not we wanted to start talking about what the impact would be on the clusters that they're in while we go forward. So 2,100 units to Sun Valley is 80% of it. Is that what you said?
It would be approximately 1,700 units would be on the Sun Valley side.
And Sun Valley, currently in the subdivisions that you did for us, that how many are in the pipeline? Do you remember?
In Sun Valley cluster, about 5,000, just under 5,100 housing units.
So this would add another 1,700 to it.
Well, no, that 1,700 would be included in that 5,100.
Okay, and Sun Valley High School's at 100%, right?
95%.
95, and the
Although-
middle school's at?
The middle school's at 97%, Rocky River Elementary at 82%. And I say the Sun Valley high capacity, knowing that we're going to open some new areas at some point that will drop the utilization down to about 90% based
Okay.
on current numbers.
Okay, so this is just, sorry, Dave's sharing something. Okay, great, thank you very much. So there's the numbers on the screen, 98, 97, and 82. So this is just for information right now, and we can have another conversation about this at the next meeting if we want to discuss where we could potentially put this subdivision if Sun Valley doesn't seem to work. And then, does anyone else have any questions on the Park Place subdivision?
No.
Okay. The next is the Courtyards at Howie Farms, and how many was that there?
115 units.
115 units. And if we've been able to confirm if that's restricted, deed restricted, 55 and over, or targeted?
What I'm getting from the county is that it is deed restricted, but
Okay.
I'm not 100% sure of that.
Okay. Does anyone have any other questions?
No.
Okay. So do you have, and I didn't ask for this ahead of time, but on the map for where the park place would be, how close is that to other clusters?
Well, it's on the line, obviously, between the Parkwood cluster and the Sun Valley cluster. And it's fairly close to the line between Rocky River and Wesley Chapel Elementaries, which
Okay.
I think is the Weddington side of the Wesley Chapel.
Mhm.
But that's within probably a mile of the subdivision is the Weddington cluster.
Okay. Okay, and then the other way toward Monroe, how far are we from the Monroe line? And if you don't know, we can get that answer next time.
Yeah, I don't know, but it's down a ways.
Okay. Okay, anybody have any other questions?
No.
Okay. The next thing on the agenda is the planning presentation. Mr. Obram, Monroe cluster and Piedmont clusters.
Okay, if you can follow along with me, I'm not savvy enough to screen share. So I'll just run through slide numbers beginning with the Monroe cluster.
Okay.
Monroe cluster, page 1 is just the title page. Page 2 is the student distribution. And as you would expect, much of that is centered around the central part of Monroe proper, with some outlying areas, of course. On slide 3, the current status, you can see Benton Heights East, Rocky River, and Walter Bickett Elementaries, and then Monroe Middle and Monroe High Schools. Their utilizations all well less than 100%, and and yes, there's the data there. Slide 4 shows the Monroe cluster with the subdivisions and other land use indicated. You'll see there's really only one active subdivision, that's Willoughby Woods, close to Rocky River Elementary. And then the purple indicates the subdivisions in planning, 3 in the Rocky River area, and 4, I believe, in the Walter Bickett and East area. And on page 5, it spells out some of that development. In the East Elementary School area, we have Medland Forest in planning with 75 units. Willoughby Woods, as I mentioned, near the Rocky River Elementary with 60 more units. And then 3 subdivisions, additional subdivisions in the Rocky River area, totaling about 250 units. In the Walter Bickett area, you'll see we have 3 subdivisions, 2 of which are in the 500 unit range, and another Alexander Commons, which is 77. And if you go back a slide to the map, those 3 subdivisions for the Walter Bickett area are right along Highway 75 as it goes past Walter Bickett Elementary. So you can see them in purple there along 75, very close to the school itself. And finally, for the Monroe cluster, we have the cohort sizes. Monroe is a little different than most of our other clusters in that the upper levels tend to be smaller than the elementary levels. And demographically, that has a lot to do with the transient nature of much of the housing in the Monroe area, which the higher transient level of the housing, the more it tends towards the younger children. And if there are no questions, I can move on to the Piedmont cluster.
That would be great.
Mm-hmm.
Slide 2 with the Piedmont cluster. You can see Piedmont is a very large attendance area, very rural, very spread out. You can see children clustered a little bit in the Unionville area, and then the bigger clusters are down along 74 near Rocky River Road.
Mm.
The current utilization status, Fairview obviously has some room. New Salem and Porter Ridge elementaries are in pretty decent shape. Unionville and Piedmont Middle School, excuse me, are both right at 100%, a little over. And then Piedmont High School is in pretty good shape. Slide 4 is the development within the Piedmont cluster. You can see in the New Salem and the Fairview areas, there are some small subdivisions, either active or in planning. They're very small, they're spread apart, and are not going to present much of an impact. And I have a slide in just a second that will show the number of units. Unionville and the Porter Ridge area. Porter Ridge Elementary, as you recall, is a split feeder between the Porter Ridge cluster and the Piedmont cluster. So what I'm considering here, of course, is just that portion that's in the Piedmont cluster. And there's a zoom in view of the southern area of the Piedmont cluster. And you can see quite a few subdivisions in planning and a couple of active ones as well. For Fairview and New Salem, 133 planned units. Like I said, it's not going to be a big impact to that area. But we continue to follow it as we do the rest of the county. Slide 7 shows the development in the Porter Ridge portion of the southern area. You can see Woodlands Creek is nearly built out. Redwood, which is right next to it, scheduled for 119 townhomes. And then the 4 other subdivisions, which for Porter Ridge will total up to 650 units, planned units. And then in the Unionville portion of that southern part of the map that I showed, several active subdivisions, none of which have a lot of homes yet to contribute, but we do still track them. And then there are 3 relatively large subdivisions. Kellerton Place, which is right where the bypass crosses Dease Road. The Olive Branch subdivision, which is at the intersection of Morgan Mill Road and Olive Branch Road. And then the Ridge Road mixed use development, which is at the corner of 601 and Ridge Road on the western side of that. So that totals up to 731 units for Unionville. And then the Piedmont cluster cohorts, a little more even than some of the other clusters, but still you'll notice that the elementary levels tend to be smaller than the middle and high levels. And with that, I would entertain any questions that anybody may have.
Thank you very much. Hearing no questions, next is the construction update. Mr. Burnett.
Thank you. So bond projects, transportation center, about 82% complete and paid out. You've got some pictures there. Project is moving along nicely with the exception of the rock, and that certainly is a big issue with this project, and we will keep you informed as to what the impact on schedule is going to be for that. As far as inside the building, it's starting to look complete. They're doing the finishes on the administrative area of the building, so that's really good. It's a good sign, and again, it's other than the rock and the offsite utilities, it's moving along well. Sun Valley High School additions and renovations do have several photos of the stadium, and as well as inside G and H, which are the admin and the dining and CTE buildings. This project is overall, the contractor's been approved for payment of about 71% of the job. The contractor, the big issue that the contractor had as far as site work was that the site grading contractor went out of business. The contractor has replaced that grading contractor, and that new grading contractor, which is B&N Grading, is on site and performing. As far as on G and H, again, they're proceeding with finishes. They are working on the concrete floors, and as well as other finishes, ceiling works, lighting, all that finish work is underway. And certainly happy to take any questions on the bond, work, before moving on to any capital, items. And if they're
Yeah, you can move on.
okay. As far as capital, we have a lot of projects that are underway. The big thing about capital is trying to get projects that are to start early, and certainly some of the conflicts that we've had are, we didn't really shut down from the school year, so there might be teachers materials or students materials that are still in the classrooms, and so we are trying to work around that. In some cases that does add a new dimension and a little bit of a delay to the work, but work is underway and at many sites as far as painting contractors contracts, some of the finishes, specifically some design projects, Piedmont High School stadium, grandstand, that project is still in design. Porter Ridge High School baseball field, we had a pre-bid meeting, and earlier this week, I believe we had 4 contractors participate in that, which is a good showing. And that bid is May 28th. We'll be taking that to a June 2nd facilities committee meeting. Do have some pictures of the new Wolf playground surface. We're real happy with that. I think that looks good.
Nice.
I think the students will be pleased with that. That'll be a nice offering for them. And really, there's the Monroe High School track and field replacement is underway. A lot of the other high schools have already picked up a lot of the turf material so that they can use it. It's much better for it to be reused elsewhere than to go into the landfill. So we are promoting that as much as we possibly can. I think as of yesterday, we'd had about 4 schools that had already picked up material. I think another was planned for today or tomorrow, and several others were interested in getting some of that material. If there's any questions on some of the other CTE project, CIP projects, I'd be happy to answer them.
I think that's it. If no one has any questions, the next item is the change order update.
So showing one project here with the change order. This was something we talked about a long time ago. As far as Sun Valley High School on suitable soils, this is a phase 1. We are still working through phase 2. This one doesn't change the contract amount, so that remains unchanged. But the unsuitable soils draw from the allowance is $341,754. And like I said, we are working on the phase 2 of that. And hopefully we'll have that in next month's change order update.
Okay. Next is the surplus. Did anyone have any questions on the surplus? Okay, next, the building and zoning permits, that's just an FYI as well. Unless anybody has any questions. Okay, the next meeting is gonna be June 2nd before the board meeting at 5 PM. Or whatever time we decide to go out before the closed session for the board meeting. So this takes us to closed session. So I need a motion to go into closed session for a bunch of different stuff. So first is pursuant to NCGS 143, 318, 10, and 11, 3 minutes from prior closed session meetings. Second is pursuant to NCGS 143-131 for the consideration of bids. And pursuant to NCGS 143-318, 11A5 to discuss the acquisition of land.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, you should have already received the link to go into closed session. Thank you.